I'm Janet Muirhead.
And I'm Taletha Bennett, and we are dietitians with the Qu'Appelle Tribal Council Health Services. And today we're going to make a red lentil stew.
So I chose the red lentil stew to highlight red lentils because they're such a great choice. I often hear that people are struggling with food budget. Food costs are going up, so red lentils are a great choice for that reason.
Yep, they're super cheap and they are very nutritious. They're high in plant protein and iron, as well as some other compounds that help prevent chronic diseases.
They're also super high in fiber. That's another great reason I like lentils.
For gut health, those good bacteria, it helps feed them.
Yeah, and I also like it because they're really quick. I can have this red lentil stew on the table in 45 minutes. So if I haven't defrosted some meat, it's just nice and quick.
It's easy if you haven't planned anything, and it's a nice, warm, hearty stew for the winter. And I find that the red lentils, they're not like those brown or green lentils. They don't have a strong taste, and they give the stew or soups a nice creamy texture.
They hide really well in like pasta dishes. The red color just kind of disappears into the pasta sauce.
So you could put it in a macaroni and cheese or a tomato-based sauce with your pasta as well.
So today in our recipe, we're going to be using an onion, 3 cloves of garlic, and we'll be using about 3 tablespoons of the tomato paste. You could probably get away with just adding the whole thing, or don't waste the other half. You can freeze it and use it later.
So that's about half of the can of tomato paste.
And the recipe is a little flexible, but today we're going to use 4 carrots. You could probably use a little bit more, and about 2 potatoes. And we're going to use a box of vegetable broth, but you could also use chicken broth, would be a great choice too. Sometimes you use like the powder or a cube.
Yes, so sometimes I will make my broth out of the bouillon powder, and so with that I usually just heat up the amount of water that the recipe asks for broth, and then I will follow the directions on the package and add the powder into the water and then put it into my recipe. And that can be a cheaper option. One thing that you have to watch out for a little bit could be maybe that the powder is higher in salt than the liquid broth.
Yeah. So the recipe needs a total of 6 cups of liquid, so we're going to be using 4 cups of the broth and then an additional 2 cups of water today. And then for spices, we're going to be doing a tablespoon of ground cumin and 1 teaspoon of paprika and about 1/8 of a pepper of cayenne pepper, and that's optional if you don't like the heat or the spice.
Yeah, and I don't find that I have cayenne pepper at home, and so sometimes I just use the same amount of chili powder.
So let's get chopping.
Okay.
You want to start with the onion?
Sure. So I like to half the onion before I take the skin off. Okay, so I always put the core side away from me. Make some vertical cuts and then horizontal cuts along the length of the onion. And then once you get to the core, it's a little bit different, so I often just take a little bit off the sides and then compost or garbage the end.
So I'll go ahead and add about 2 tablespoons of oil. You could use olive oil or canola oil. And we'll get that warming up on a medium heat. And if you want to go ahead and start sauteing that, Taletha, I will get our garlic ready to add in.
Perfect.
So we're going to put in 3 cloves. To do the garlic, I usually cut off the end of the root. And then I just use the knife and squish it so that all that little paper bits come off easier.
And crushing the garlic clove lets out all of the nice flavor and the oils from inside the clove.
You could use a garlic powder, but the fresh garlic gives a lot more flavor, I think, hey?
I think so too. And garlic is something that you can purchase, and it stores really well in a dark, cool place for quite a while. So even if you get 3 whole bulbs, usually you can keep it for quite a while for other recipes that you might have.
You gotta spend your time really chopping this up. You don't want big pieces, it's really strong. How are the onions coming? Are you ready for me to add the garlic?
The onions have just started to sizzle here.
So and I usually wait until the onions are about half cooked, because garlic overcooks really quickly when it's chopped up so fine.
They'll get brown pretty quick, but the onions, we know they're done when they're more translucent or clear. So when they get about halfway, then we'll add the garlic.
So I'll get going on the carrots while you're watching that.
Awesome.
These carrots are a little bit old, so I am going to peel them. I often don't peel the carrots. I would quite often just wash.
Okay, so the onions have really softened up and they have become pretty clear, translucent on the outer edges and with a little bit of darker white in the middle of the pieces. So I think it's time to add the garlic. And I just think this is the best smell, cooking onions and garlic.
So I found this recipe on a website called Budget Bites, and the author suggested that you add your tomato paste at this point once your onions and your garlic are cooked, and then you stir it in and you let your tomato paste brown up a little bit.
So it should darken a little bit so it looks like a deep maroon or burgundy color. So not quite a bright red anymore. It's going to darken up a bit at this point.
You sound like you've done this before.
I read the recipe.
Oh.
On the page.
So adding the tomato paste and cooking it will sweeten it up a little bit.
Actually, I can smell that flavor change. You can smell
Yeah.
it getting sweeter.
See some nice browning. I think we're ready to add our other vegetables.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So we'll add our 4 carrots. Today we're adding 2 potatoes, and I'm not going to peel them. The peel has lots of good nutrition. I'm cutting these potatoes quite small. I think that works well in this stew.
I really like that this recipe uses ingredients that you might find around the house. Maybe the red lentils are a new ingredient for you, but other than that, it shares some pretty common household ingredients.
Some other things you could add, or it would be celery, I think would be great. Some spinach is another good choice. And it adds some nice color to it. Spinach you would just add right at the end.
You could even do a block or a half a block of frozen spinach, heated and drained of all the liquid, and that I find is a good option for our family because we don't, often spinach goes to waste because it has quite a short life in the fridge, so we like to buy frozen spinach.
I'm also adding 2 cups of water. And now we can add our red lentils.
And red lentils, I know they might seem intimidating at first, but they're a very easy ingredient once you try it out. And like Janet had said earlier, it's very budget friendly as protein goes, and I think too, if people are, or as people are becoming more concerned with sustainability, it's also a very sustainable choice. We grow a lot of lentils in Saskatchewan, and I think that's important too.
And for spices, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of cumin, 1 teaspoon of paprika.
And does it matter if it's smoked or not?
No, I don't usually buy smoked paprika, so maybe I haven't tried it to really know. Maybe it would add something extra, but just regular paprika is what I use.
I find that smoked paprika it does have a hint of a smoky flavor, but it's hard to find in the grocery store and it's more expensive, so I usually just use regular paprika.
And I will go ahead and add the optional about 1/8 of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. And that's all we're going to be adding to our pot. We'll let it come to a boil, and then we're going to turn it down to a low simmer and put the lid on it. And we're going to let it simmer, stirring it once in a while during the 30 minutes that it'll take to cook the red lentils. So our red lentil stew is finished. It's simmered for about 30 minutes. The carrots and potatoes are soft.
And it has a nice thick texture from the red lentils.
And this recipe will give you about 6 generous servings. I hope you enjoyed watching today and that you'll enjoy trying this with your family.